Welcome to a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms new dawn today. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unpanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Welcome to 2025. June 3rd, we have 3 more days until Insurrection Day here in the United States of America. And good morning to all of you. Good afternoon to the lot of you. And good evening to some of you that are otherworldly. So, as Katie in England, good evening. So, welcome to the Legacy Right. I am the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser, and welcome in to Andrew
Hey,
Joseph.
how you
So,
doing? It's
doing
that
all right,
spoon
doing all
card.
right. So, unveiling the new logo up in the corner. So, let's help
It's the weekly
let's expand
legacy.
it. This is a weekly legacy. This is a new Friday edition. This is what do we call this portion of the legacy ride? We basically been running season 1 for like 3 years.
Yeah,
So would this be
this
season
is
2 then? Are
this
we
is the
finally
second
season
act.
2?
We're on
This
the
is the
second act.
second. Yeah, we are on the second act, and we're trying to do our best to bring you something different, something new each and every week. So, sort of like this guy. But in reality, every Friday live on YouTube, X, and Rumble. And after that, everywhere else around the podcast circuit, the number one podcast in the Liberty sphere, all over Detroit. Buds in reality. Sean Collins, the man with a lot to say and a lot indeed. Don't miss his latest episode. This this upcoming episode is Friday. This Friday, tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. So
We're
check it
undercut him.
out. So, but we're trying to undercut him right now. So,
Yeah.
anyways, what was the let's jump into it though, Andrew. We went over, in my opinion, some important things this week that not everybody wants to explore. So, whether
They
it
don't
was
want to know about
Monday,
Bubble Boy.
they don't want to know about Bubble Boy, no. But yeah, speaking of Bubble Boy,
Yeah.
let me get the scroll. So make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us all over YouTube, Rumble, repost this on X, share this anywhere and everywhere. And when it drops onto the podcast sphere, give us a nice little review. Give us a 5-star if you like us, or a 1-star if you don't like us. Whatever, it still builds the algorithm. But yeah, speaking of Bubble Boy, I mean, it's heartfelt, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's very positive. It shows the it really does show
Commitment.
the extent the commitment and the extension of the goodness and the kindness of humanity. And that is what we're missing in today's day and age, is we're not getting a whole lot of positive interactivity with society.
Society's a
Everybody's
revolving door nowadays. It's just one crisis after another. It gets old. And something
it
like
does.
Bubble Boy, that definitely makes it more positive and worth continuing on.
Hmm.
So
Yes, Katie, humanity still has kindness. There is still kindness in this world. There are still people out there that want to do good for their fellow man. And in the instance of Monday's episode of Legacy News, down in South America, in Brazil, right off the coast of Sao Paulo,
Ball, yeah,
yeah, um, you had the greatest instance of kindness and just
hu-
pure
humility.
humility. Exactly. I mean, a man literally saw, while on his boat with his family, a lost boy
About
floating in a
8 years
little
old.
bubble. Yeah, about 8. Yeah, floating, lost to sea, and this little bubble device. I guess it's something that you could rent down there. Little device for safety precautions, uh, so children can be able to play and interact, I guess, without
I I, I
drowning.
think what it part of the thing is that they don't want to get sand on them and have to go home and take a shower or whatever and ruin the pipes. So they rent those things out to anybody who's interested in doing it. That's just speculating.
Yeah. Well, most of these bubbles, though, they really should be uh, tethered to a swimming pool area. So the safety precaution, I would assume, is uh, the child can have the ability to, swim without swimming in the pool.
Yeah,
And then I think it also probably has like a germ effect, so germaphobe parents. So there you go. But at the same time, um, when renting these on the shore, they are tethered by rope. And in this instance, the rope ended up getting split from its tether, and the wind and the current carried the boy out to sea. And thank goodness that that this man was out and about and caught it, because
right.
he saved this kid and saved the family a lot of distress and sadness by allowing this by bringing this kid back to shore.
Slowly.
And
You can't
so
overdo that kind of thing in a
mhm,
situation like this. So
mhm. So welcome, Tim.
it's
Tim
him.
O'Connor, the least of many evils. He is the freedom variant. So we're plugging now at this point. So Tim actually has a podcast and a radio show. So he does a radio show in his home state of communist New York, trying to spread that liberty. But the free solution. So check that out.
He's a
I believe
brave man.
it's he is a brave man, especially in New York. So him and Kevin do they usually record on Wednesdays, I believe. So good morning. Good
Hey, William.
morning, Vietnam. Yeah. So good morning, William. So welcome all in the chat. Welcome all that are viewing. And let's get the show on the road, man. Let's bring some positivity.
Right.
So anything more that you want to add to the brilliance of that article in Brazil?
I just want to say I saw what you said about me, and anybody who hadn't, you better go back and watch the episode because it was very controversial.
What did I say about you? That you're bald and you're fake and you're an asshole?
Yeah, exactly. And I need hair plugs.
And I mean it. I mean it sincerely. You need you need hair plugs, and honestly, just shave it, dude.
That's Mr.
Just accept.
Baldhead to you. It says it right there in the Bible. You should know better.
Exactly. Exactly. It's in the Bible. So that is beautiful. It's so nice to know that they're still good in people. I know about a dozen people who still have their humanity, but that's all. Few and far between. It also varies from culture to culture as well. Society, the cultural construct of society certainly has limited the ability of human nature um, to accept human nature. We're all corruptible. We
Well,
are all
valuable. But the more concentrated society is, the less, the more difficult it is for you to, practice that good faith and good behavior. I think.
exactly, exactly. So, speaking of cultural valuableness, um, we also discussed the late passing of what some would refer to as the only good Democratic president, but then also others would say that he was a horrible president. Jimmy Carter passed over
They're
the
probably
weekend.
they're probably blue pilled.
Probably, yeah, they're probably blue pilled. So, uh, any thoughts on that? Just before it dissipates into the news cycle that goes really, really fast because it has now been a week since his passing.
It is kind of wild how quickly it went by. Man, that guy was ahead of his time. You saw the episode we did. You pulled some videos up from him talking on David Letterman and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
he's smart to the game. He knew about what was going on. He trying to foreshadow for people.
He pretty much called out the game that the political elites all play, government restrictions, the intelligence community, and their apparatus of destruction and despair. I mean, there's no, I think we know specifically with Jeffrey Epstein now. We will never find out who exactly was involved and who were his clients officially, but I think it's safe to say that. The Jeffrey Epstein ordeal, and it certainly was foreshadowed by Jimmy Carter in that David Letterman clip. Go check that out. Legacy episode, Legacy News, our Tuesday episode. Believe that is our 12th episode now, 11th or 12th. Um, and Jimmy Carter basically foreshadowed the human trafficking, and it goes to show you that he knew his wits about him, and perhaps the reason why he didn't win a second term, amongst other reasons,
Essentially,
obviously. So yeah, amongst other reasons. So hmm, wasn't wasn't he 90 when he died? 10 years off. He was 100.
man, that's
He
wild.
was
100 years old, oldest president to
mhm,
ever live.
yeah, 1924 to 2024. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he turned
he fought
100
the
last year.
machine, man. There's an episode of the Shadow O'Brien radio program, and they call it. I'm not sure exactly what the title was, but if you Google the Brain, the old time radio, the Shadow, you listen to that episode. They talk about the machine back in the 20s and 30s in that episode of how politics works and how long we've been fighting this monster. So
Politics is a monster, and it's so divisive that whenever you do have a somewhat saintly man, and he was a Christian. I mean, the man literally put boots to ground, hand to hand, helping build homes after his presidency.
he was more
I
Christian
mean,
after his presidency than
yeah,
it was before. I guess
he
because he
was. He
saw
was.
what the machine was like.
Yeah, yeah. Which is a shame. He was also a peanut farmer. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is
I
awesome.
mean,
Um,
how do you move up the card from a peanut farmer? That's what I want to know.
because he's awesome. Yeah. So he had a decent and long life. He made his mark on the world. He certainly did. He certainly did. So the next thing that we need to touch base on is how about that Trump coin, man? How about that CBC? How
Yeah.
about How about that United States against the crypto world once again?
Do Quan, I think is how it's pronounced.
Yeah. Is it Doe
Yeah,
or
yeah,
Do?
not. Uh, I can't remember if it's do or do. Don't do. I don't know. But
Don't
I mean,
Quan.
not even yeah, right. He's not even an American citizen. He never had citizenship. He's from South Korea, and they're extraditing him on breaking laws in the United States. How does that work? But even before Bitcoin was the thing, I remember seeing a long time ago on the news on Fox News. This is back when I watched Fox News. They were talking about some lady who was like a butcher or something like that who broke a law over in Europe because she was trying to import something that you had to do it a specific way, and they had her arrested and deported to Europe to face trial. So, as subjective, you'd have to. I mean, there's so much that's passed through the years. You probably won't be able to find the article. I just remember seeing it. I was like, "Oh, that's outrageous." I mean, they do these things all the time. It doesn't matter. They make an example of people that they don't like, or just because they can make an example of somebody and they like to make the point.
Yeah. And speaking of points to be made, I have a video that we're gonna go over in just a moment of a man that likes to prove a certain point and a certain narrative all the time. The most economically illiterate man masquerading as an economist. He's literally retarded. I think you know who it is, everybody. But let's save face for right now, and let's let's go on about why is it that the United States is so heavily adamant in taking down those that are involved in crypto.
Well, I think it's because obviously they're, the central financial center of the world. So they have interest objectively to try to maintain that position. I'm not justifying it. That's just, bread and butter, par for the course.
Are you saying that they know that the dollar is a shit coin and they need to justify that the dollar shit coin has some sort of value with the backing of lawfare and the American gun? So they have to
I
take
mean,
out Do
it's
Kwon and Roger Ver and CZ and Ross Ulbricht and Julian Assange, even though he's not really crypto, but
yeah.
he's a
Are
hero.
you blue pill or are you red pill? You got to figure it out. That's how you can answer the question.
Screw the blue
White
and the
pill or
red
black
pill,
pill?
man. Yeah, are you white pilled or black pilled?
Oh man,
Mm-mm. Uh-uh.
yeah, definitely.
The US
He's
government is
probably
probably worried that someone can earn enough to buy them out and gain freedom. Well, didn't Roger Ver basically do that?
in theory, in
Mm.
practice, but even after he did that, he made sure that he had two people run over his numbers. He made sure everything he said specifically in his conversations, private conversations, that he knew that they were going to come after him for what he was doing, and he wanted everything to be done by the book. And still, they screwed him over.
You have some of the best attorneys in America. They do everything
Like
legally
Jack
by the
Whitehall.
book. And that's honestly, that's the reason why they took him down. That book was published 2 weeks before his arrest. So he spread the truth because in
Yeah,
reality, he did everything correct, everything legal. He did not owe anything, but what are they trying to get him for? They're trying to get him for the value of what Bitcoin is now, that he still owes them taxes. But in reality, I mean, he's already paid his exit fees. He's
yeah.
already paid his taxes. He's already no longer he hasn't been an American citizen since 2014. He started his renouncement process in like 2006. And
That's a
now he's
long time.
basically, yeah. And now he's sequestered to effectively to house arrest on an island and off the coast of Spain, just
Just
like Galileo Galilei.
word word of the wise: if you're gonna leave the United States and renounce your citizenship, don't go to Spain, no matter what. that's where they do all the blood work. I'm just gonna put it that way.
Very true. Very true. So it really is. The empire of today is starting to look like the empire of very, very old, that being the church in their inquisition. And what they're doing to Roger Ver looks very similar to what the church in the 17th century did to Galileo Galilei for being observant and spreading knowledge beyond the precipice of the earthly centered aspect of the church.
Imagine having that kind of power back then. Kind of, levers you had to have to centralize to that level.
I
It's
mean,
gotta
we're
be
living
wild.
it.
Well, I know, but this is, we have the internet now. The USSR couldn't do anything anywhere near as what we're at now. I mean, that was back then. They didn't even have, computers or anything. Oh yes, it is. Thanks for it. It's from Final Fantasy. It's a great game.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, but yeah, I mean, so what do you think Trump has to do with this? How much will Trump have to do with this scenario now that
Well,
Do Kwon has been the latest to be indicted?
I mean, they did this before he was in office. This is obviously an issue of confluence. They're trying to get him in the process on Biden's way out and Trump's way in, and get him caught up in the mix of the river there, merging the
Mm,
rivers confluence.
hmm
They think he's gonna be so busy and distracted he won't pay that much attention, just like Roger.
Or he's already paying enough attention and he's not going to do anything, period. Never was. And who's to say that Do Kwon wouldn't have been extradited after the fact once Trump was inaugurated? Because remember, uh, Trump had 4 years to do what he has promised that he'll do on day one this term.
Well, I mean, he is a
Commute
narcissist. They
and
are
pardon Ross
classical
Ulbricht.
liars.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was also, speaking of another political prisoner, it was Julian Assange. Julian Assange was finally arrested and placed into extradition hold under Trump's watch,
Yep. Tell me
2019.
lies. Tell me sweet little lies.
So,
That's,
yeah, has
I
Trump
mean,
really changed, or is campaign Trump
censor,
just
the
the
censorship's
best
coming
decision?
back. I mean, you saw what happened on Twitter the other day. Everybody's
Oh, with
losing their
the
minds.
over the HB1 thing.
Well, that and people starting to get banned and getting their blue checks taken away and losing
Yeah, that has
monetization.
a lot of that began because of the HB1 debate. What is it?
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to know Andrew Joseph's take on HB1. What is your what do you think about this whole HB1 argument?
I mean, it's a convenient way for you to say, "Oh, well, we're following the law," but then replace the native population's work, uh, a potential for work. If it's an
What if
option and you get cheaper. Look, there was I remember a couple, probably about 10 years ago, reading about how they were using those H-1 visas to like hire people to work at Hershey's and stuff like that in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's not a hard technical job. Anybody could do that, but
oh no.
they're bringing people in from out of the country. Say, oh yeah, you could do this. You have a lot of fun. Meanwhile, there are probably people that can't get jobs in that part of in that part of the town, and so it's just harder and harder for them. It's not
Well,
just there; it's all over the place.
who's to say that people don't necessarily want those jobs in that part of the country, though? Like, most Americans really don't want to work the jobs that or if it's a more expanded academic level job like engineering or computation or anything of that ladder, most Americans anymore aren't really, they're lacking in the educational skills to advance themselves to take those type of jobs. And then your little shitways jobs, a lot of Americans don't want to take. So there's other reasons for that.
Yeah,
But who's to say that the entitlement of and I'm just using this as a formality of argument. Who's to say that it has the entitlement ideology of Americans who don't want to take the shit jobs or aren't educated or want to go further with educate, because it's expensive and time consuming for the kind of jobs that you do need your intellect and your planning and your common sense. Um, who's to say that Americans just don't want these jobs? So what do you
I've
say
lived
there?
into I've lived at tourist traps before, and most of the people, they don't have any option but to work at the McDonald's with the different like little gimmicky restaurant or stores. And so, in a place like Hershey Event, that's the biggest gimmick you can get in that area because of the length and history it has. I mean, if you don't have any other option, you're gonna take it, right?
Yeah.
But if you have these people coming in because it's cheaper for them to hire through a service and bring them in to work for the season, then you got a different story. I'm just trying to be realistic and,
Oh,
boots on the ground kind of thing situation. Not
yeah. No, understandable. Basically, what is going on within this debate is the fact that most the labor market has been compromised, sort of like any market. It's been compromised. There's very little options, and there's just and it's a cause for the elimination of competition, because how can one compete when you're bringing in individuals that will work for less and they're willing to work for less? Let's be frank, most of these people coming in are willing to work for less. I mean, if
it.
you have a job, let's say you have an engineering job, let's expand it. Let's advance it, the marking of this labor apparatus for a minute instead of wage jobs. Let's say you have an engineer. What is the average? The average engineer, like on the low end, coming out entry level, is about what, 70,000, 70 to 100,000 a year, something like
U.S.
that.
dollars for a native
And
worker.
yeah, US dollars, of course. So if you bring in people in that field from another nation, say India or China or what have you, and they're willing to work this engineer job on the entry level for 40 to 50,000, well, who do you think these companies are going to want to hire? Of course, they're going to take the Indian immigrant that's willing to work, the Indian engineer willing to come into this country and take a job that's on the low end entry level, 70 to 100 grand, to work 45 to 50 grand a year.
Well,
Of
I think
course.
there's the middleman is going to make that connection as a service provider and take a small cut of that. And the person who's coming in from India or China, they're going to be earning more than they would in their native population, which means that the
Thank you.
value of the labor is being equi- equi- equitable, becoming more and more
Equitable, yeah.
equitable across the entire working world. So there's really there's no potential there for because everybody's effectively been equaling out what they're making, that purchasing power.
Katie has this. One of the biggest problems is that people know how to do the jobs but lack the required qualifications to get the position. A lot of unqualified are more skilled than the qualified. What do you think of that, Andrew?
Well, I it depends on where you're at. Um, I used to live out in Wyoming, right? And what would be unqualified in Wyoming would be just doing use basic computer graphics for like a Ford company. But if you live in New York City, you're not going to be able to do anything near that and get away with it because they need specific skills.
Hmm.
So
Which leads us to our brain. Perhaps licensures and permission to work certain jobs, uh, regulatory oversight should be ridded away, and competition should be had through the labor market from the experience of one to continue to learn while they get into the field, and that's how we wither away the unqualified garbage.
I mean, Lysander Spooner didn't have any formal training. He worked his way up the card just like any other job. It took a lot longer probably for him because he wasn't formally trained
Hmm.
by anybody, but he was a very successful lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, he
Well,
he
effort.
literally took on the USPS and made them lower their prices.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now the postal service has its own issues, so
Yeah,
but it's still to this day. But yeah, it took back in his day. You didn't necessarily to become an attorney. You really all you had to do was have some sort of mentorship, someone to sign on to say, "Hey, this guy knows what to do," and to know either the right people or to learn on your own. Like Lysander Spooner, and I hate to bring him up, but his opposite, Abraham Lincoln, both of them worked through becoming attorneys and passed the bar self-taught. And it was a whole lot easier back in the 19th century to self-teach yourself and then go pass the bar in your state. Lysander Spooner in Massachusetts, Abraham Lincoln in Illinois. So, and now you need at least 6 years of university. You need 4 years of bullshit to get a bachelor's,
propaganda.
and then you go on for another 2 to 3 years for your Juris Doctrine. And then you have to still pass the bar to actually become licensed as an attorney.
Right.
It's pitiful, man. It's pitiful. So, yes, we all love Spinner. Or yeah, if you're a true libertarian. Um, so, but with that, speaking of, we've actually come to the crossroads of the halfway point. So, let's get into the second half. But before then, Buds in Reality, the number one Liberty podcast in all of Detroit. Get your politically charged madness of one man with a whole lot of things to say. Sean Collins, hosted every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, X, Rumble, and all over the podcast sphere. After that, check out Buds in Reality. Don't miss it tonight. He's going to have a good one. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. YouTube, X, Rumble, everywhere else. So check out Buds in Reality. So let's get on to the main event there, Andrew.
All right.
And this is Robert Reich, or Robert Reich as he should be called. Um, he's a moron. Let's rediscover old Robert and his fallacies of economic myths. The 10 biggest myths of our economy. We might be stopping this.
Economics is an objective science that has nothing to do with politics or morality.
Hold up. I'm going to stop you right there. Before we move on, what is your take on economics, and what is economics objective?
Of course, it's objective. I mean, you need to take the subjective to make the objective. That's human action is something you study in order to move forward. And if you want a real defined version of human action, look into the Enneagram of personality. It's a very, very interesting subject that coded. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to study alongside the Austrian School of Economics.
Well, yeah, and what he's about to start is he says that economics is a school of politics and morality. What is your take on that one before you go in? Is there a little bit of morality and politics and economics, or is that all fake news?
Well, it depends on what your what your moral standards are. People either want to be successful and they're gonna lean into applying shame to people's success, or to maintain success and to grow, or they're gonna try to make people proud, and that's a big thing. They
Hmm.
call it a fix in the Enneagram. Um, Pride, shame, which is authenticity, the individual, and then you have the achiever, which is the third fix. So it's just, I mean, and then you have the fear center. If you're not, you feel like, growing up, you weren't smart enough, so you try to get as much information as you can. You feel like you need to be loyal to people. That's the six fix. Uh, and then you want to have as much fun as you can, because if you think if people like you, then you're going to be secure in that way, and that's the seven
Hmm.
fix. So
Well, let's see what this retard has to say.
Bunk. If you really want to understand the economy, you have to understand politics and also morality. They're treated as separate fields, separate disciplines. Each has its own experts and specialists, but the three are completely intertwined. In fact, through most of the 1800s, the field of study that we call economics was called political economy. People who studied it saw that the two fields were the same. Adam Smith, the Scotsman who wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776, is considered the father of economics, especially by conservatives. But he never called himself an economist. He called himself a moral philosopher. Why? Because he was really interested in
That's
the
actually
meaning
true,
of a good society.
which is a rare
That's what it's all
agreement.
about, or should be all about. What sort of society do we want? These are basically moral questions. A society has the ability to make its own rules and determine how much inequality is acceptable, how much poverty. Is slavery acceptable? Is it okay for young children to have to work? Should there be a minimum wage? Is it okay
Negative.
for an adult who works 40 hours a week or more to earn so little that her family is impoverished? Is it okay for children of the super
Sounds like a monopoly on the money supply issue there, Robert.
wealthy to
mhm.
inherit so much wealth they never have to work a day in their lives? When we talk about morality, we can't avoid the issue of power. How much power should the wealthy have? Is it okay for a corporation to monopolize a market? Is it okay for workers to join together to form a labor union? In the late 19th century, economists began to de-emphasize politics and morals. They started treating economics as more of a science and less of a philosophical study that took into account morality. Alfred Marshall's monumental work, Principles of Economics, established economics as its own science in 1890. But economics, politics, and morality cannot be separated. We need to see the moral underpinnings of economics. That's bunk.
I'm gonna stop you right there, Robert. Before we jump into this, the myth is the government obstructs the myth that he's about to debunk is that government obstructs the free market. Andrew, before we move on, I'm gonna let you debunk Robert.
Well, I mean, when government controls a monopoly and money supply, what do you expect to happen? They pick winners and losers even though they don't intend to. So
Thus,
And then
the government
when somebody
obstructs
loses,
free.
it's a conspiracy,
Yeah.
and that drives
Well, it
from
is.
all loyalty.
So, in effect, the government picking winners and losers means they've obstructed the free market. Let's see what this retard has to say.
Politicians of all stripes talk as if the rules that govern the economy are determined either by the free market or by government. But that's wrong. There can't be a choice between the free market and government because a market cannot exist without a government to organize and enforce it.
A market can't exist without a government to organize.
Sounds like some bullshit to me.
Considering a market is natural through the means of human action and interaction, and without markets, say in the agrarian society, without the element and the evolution of agriculture, you wouldn't have civilization of today, because it was agriculture that allowed for settlement and civilized settlement and eventual urbanization that eventually led to the political structures of the day because of urbanization, society making. So the market came first there, Robert. The market is natural, and it will always be natural.
A market is an arena where goods and services are exchanged. How that market functions depends upon rules determined by government. The rules govern property, what can be owned, monopoly, what degree of market power is permissible, contracts, what can be exchanged and under what circumstances, bankruptcy, what happens when borrowers can't pay up, and how is all of this enforced? These rules are decided on one way or another by human beings. But who exactly and whose interests are they represented? Over the past few decades, large corporations, Wall Street, and wealthy individuals have gained increasing influence over politics. Corporate PAC spending has reached.
I like to say, I think it's hilarious that he's drawing the CEO faces with angry expressions, like they're supposed to be evil.
Right.
The big bad evil CEO.
Well, the whole feature
Go ahead.
of our current system is that in order to get anything done around here, you have to bribe the people at the very top. I mean, that's been happening for a long time.
Are you saying that Lobby Wow is real?
You're damn right. You're going to believe it.
All right. I'm going to try not to pause it. It's a long video.
Millions of dollars a year. Business lobbyists spend 68 times as much on lobbying as labor unions. And big corporations march into courtrooms with platoons of lawyers. Simultaneously, centers of countervailing power that between the 1930s and 1980s enabled America's middle and lower middle class to exert their own influence have withered. For example, labor union membership has fallen from a third of private sector workers in the 1950s to just 6% in 2023. Small businesses have been replaced by giant big box and online retailers. Small investors by giant institutional investors. Political parties, once anchored at state and local levels, have become giant Washington-based fundraising machines. As a result, the rules of the American economy are now largely organized by big corporations and those with great wealth for their own gain. Ever larger upward distributions inside the market, from the poor and working class to the top, have become normalized as functions of a market that is assumed to be neutral. But remember, markets
can't have a neutral market when there's only one monetary system. That's imposing your ethical worldview and picking, like I said earlier, picking winners and losers, and it's shaping the direction of the society. it's like we was talking about in the World Blockchain Roundtable yesterday, that this is just reintroducing the Red Army versus White Army thing from Russia back during the Russian Civil War.
That's exactly what it is. So pick or choose a side, everybody. Pick or choose a side. The market cannot be neutral unless it is allowed to, unless human beings are allowed to compete and cooperate within that market without interference from other institutions, other individuals that want to exert their control over said market.
Oh, I'd like to leave one compliment about the current system is that the unions are dying out. I'm always good for that.
I'm all for that. But I mean, the only reason the unions are dying out, honestly, is because you have the protection of the largest union of them all, the federal fucking government. So
Which is slowly dying.
Yes. As much as I like to support local businesses, larger companies like Amazon are needed for deliveries that small businesses can't provide. I need deliveries because of my health issues. Yes, large companies like Amazon have their place. Local businesses have their place. So there is a time. That is why the market, to a certain extent, should be allowed to be a market. So there's nothing you can do. Amazon is here. Amazon has grown. Amazon is basically life, and Amazon allows for a faster transit of delivery, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, we also want to have a semblance of choice in the matter, and that is where local businesses come to mind, smaller businesses that can compete on a smaller level, a local level, and at the same time in cooperation with the larger businesses so that you have a healthy market. Because not everybody wants to use Amazon. And some people have to use Amazon. So there can be a balance if people have some common bloody sense. Well, nobody has common sense anymore, especially when it comes to the government. Or Robert
are
Wright.
not neutral. They reflect who wields power. Get ready for this lie. The richest people have worked the hardest and therefore deserve their wealth. Bunk. Income and wealth increasingly depend on who has the power to set the rules of the game. CEOs of large corporations and Wall Street's top traders
There's that
effectively
evil
set
CEO.
their own pay, and their pay has gone into the stratosphere. They've linked their pay to the stock market through stock options, used corporate stock buybacks to increase stock prices, and timed the sale of their options to those increases. Some get inside.
Hold up. What do you think about this? Is he basically debunking the left's Nina Turner's narrative at this point?
I mean, it all depends on what tools you have available to you. I mean, if you're a multi-generation, it's a lot easier to get access to certain things than somebody who's doesn't have, a leg to stand on and they're just starting out. So it's all about how fast or how much you pace yourself and what levels you can reach.
Fair point. Let's continue.
To those increases. Some get inside information about corporate profits and losses before the rest of the public and trade on that information. Others create or work for companies that have monopolized their markets. That means they can charge consumers higher prices than if they had to compete for those consumers. And they can keep wages low because workers have fewer options of whom to work for. Others use their political influence to get changes in laws, regulations, and taxes that benefit themselves and their corporations while harming those who don't have this kind of influence. Others were just lucky enough to be born into or marry into wealth. These days, the most important predictor of someone's future income and wealth in the United States is the income and wealth of their parents.
I gotta give it to him.
60%
I like the
of
evil
all
music.
wealth is
Very thematic.
inherited. And we're on the cusp of the biggest intergenerational transfer of wealth in history, from rich boomers to their children.
Andrew, you got something to say about that?
Hey, I moved to the top floor.
You moved to the top. If that's the case there, Robert, why is it that the youngest generations can't leave home?
Well, obviously it's because they've inflated the shit out of our money supply. You have $1 million student loans. You making all your money goes directly to pay just the interest on that. I mean, there's some blowback to that. You're not experiencing it yet.
And what do you think he is trying to say?
He's trying to white knight, trying to justify, his particular point of view.
Are you saying he's gaslighting us all?
Potentially.
I mean, he's not gaslighting all of us. You, me, our viewers. He's not gaslighting us. We know. We see through it. But he's certainly manipulating the masses that think that he's a genius.
I believe there's a term for that. No, that's bait. Yeah, that's bait.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the pay of average workers has stagnated because they have lost economic power and the political influence that goes with it. Corporations have lowered wages by outsourcing work abroad, replacing workers with software, and preventing workers from unionizing. Wealth doesn't measure how hard someone has worked or what they deserve, but how well our economic system has worked
There they are taking
for
off
them.
to wealth. What's
Here's a
missing there, buddy?
barefaced lie. Corporate political donations are free speech.
Give me your answer.
The free speech? Well, what conversation are they contributing to? Is just
Here.
because you have free speech doesn't mean you're actually doing anything with it.
That's true. Let's.
Rubbish. That's not free speech. That's bribery. In 1971,
Is it bribery, Andrew?
I mean, are they paying people at the top to try to get them reelected? Isn't that what Trump
Sure.
was talking about trying to fix? I know. It's all politics, but I'm just saying. At least they're semi-acknowledging the problem.
So isn't Robert at this point basically saying that he's basically
He's foreshadowing. He's like trying to
Oh,
make people prepared for what really is going on behind the scenes. He's the man
Oh, yeah.
behind the curtain.
well, isn't he contradicting himself from earlier on where he was trying to say that economics is political and morality, and now he's basically saying if economics is political, right, then why are you saying that corporate donations are not free speech but bribery? Well, wouldn't it be free speech if economics is political?
Maybe they recorded this in segments and they just stitched it together.
That's what I'm thinking.
Lewis Powell urged the leaders of American corporations to devote a portion of their profits to politics. Since then, America has witnessed the largest and most entrenched system of legalized bribery in its history. Big corporations and the super wealthy have rigged the free market for their own benefit. Throughout the 1980s, corporate PAC spending on congressional races increased nearly five-fold. Labor union PAC spending rose only about half as fast. By the 2016 campaign cycle, corporations and Wall Street contributed $34 for every $1 contributed by labor unions and all public interest organizations combined. In 1980, the richest 1/100th of 1% of Americans provided 10% of all donations to federal elections. By 2012, they provided 40%. Both political parties have become giant fundraising machines fueled by money from the top. What's the result of all this bribery? Politicians use the money to get elected and re-elected, and then lawmakers do what corporations and wealthy individuals want. It's legalized bribery. Here's a real whopper. The market doesn't play favorites. Bunk. Many of the most vocal proponents of the so-called free market have for years been actively reorganizing the market for their own benefit. They don't want us to notice what's happened over the last half century, as big money has corrupted our politics. Laws that limit campaign donations have been weakened.
Before we move on, Andrew, is the market
Blowback.
unfair?
It's just blowback because they implemented their own, ethical perspective of what should be right and wrong. It's a consequence.
So once again, he's contradicting himself on the morality aspect of economics.
But then again, the unions are dying, so I don't know.
If the market is fair, then the sun is pink with yellow spots. Exactly. The market's good. You're going to have. It's not going to be fair.
He's making a very good case to lead the United States.
He is. He's making a great case for all entrepreneurs to go invest into. Honestly, a couple years ago, I would say Andrew Henderson was right and go invest in companies in Georgia. But with the fact that World War III is looming and we're having issues with Russia, and Georgia might be one of those countries that is under the radar of getting hit. Don't do that. But at the same time, there are certainly for entrepreneurs and to invest, there are certainly places you can go to better than the United States. So
you know who you could invest in? WhoTouchedIt.com. Who touched the thermostat? Great political apparel.
Fantastic. I like it. I like that. Flipping that ad in.
Or repealed, allowing wealthy individuals and corporations to essentially bribe politicians. Antitrust laws have been virtually abandoned, with the result that big corporations have got much bigger and mergers and acquisitions far more common. So-called right-to-work laws have made it harder to organize labor unions. So the unionized portion of the private sector workforce has dropped to just 6%. High-paid bankers have pocketed huge sums while exposing America to extraordinary economic risk. After the 2008
But you know what, Robert? At least the unions are dying.
Wall Street crisis and the taxpayer-funded bailout of the big banks, only one top banker went to jail. Corporations have been able to use bankruptcy to get out of labor contracts, but homeowners cannot use bankruptcy to protect their homes from being taken back by lenders. And former students can't use bankruptcy to protect their earnings from being garnished to pay their student loans. Hedge fund and private equity managers get a low tax rate on their incomes, courtesy of a special loophole that neither Democratic nor Republican presidents have closed. Lower trade barriers have enabled corporations to outsource work to nations that pay lower wages and then sell the goods back to the United States. Americans get the benefit of cheaper goods, but lose unionized manufacturing jobs. It's been a vicious cycle. Each change in laws has ratcheted wealth and power upward, making it easier for the wealthy and powerful to gain further legal changes that ratchet even more wealth and power upward. You've heard this lie. Global trade is good for everyone.
Okay, I want to leave a comment with that just before you interject me. I used to be a hefty boy. I still kind of am. Okay, I like a Twinkie. Unions took my Twinkies. Damn it! It's
Yeah, but
the
didn't they bring the Twinkies back?
international community brought the Twinkie back by buying out the rights to it. Thank you, Mexican corporations. Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say before we move on this, because he's about to do the pants on fire thing.
Everyone needs a
Global
gimmick.
trade. Everybody needs a gimmick. Global trade. So with that, it sounds like you're for global trade.
I mean, it fades Twinkie.
It did pay for the Twinkies. It brought the Twinkies back. The Union of Sandmen should be abolished. They've all gone on strike because I'm a nightmare to get to sleep. This is why unions need to be abolished. All right.
That's bunk.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Many economists believe in the doctrine of comparative advantage, which posits that trade is good for all nations when each nation specializes in what it does best. But what about costs to workers and the environment? What if a country's comparative advantage comes from people working under dangerous or exploitative conditions, or from preventing them from forming labor unions, or allowing employers to hire young children?
I think I can only talk about this country, right? Because we like cheap goods. Perhaps deregulate, bring back all the jobs, and we wouldn't have this conversation. But Americans like cheap goods, and what do you think is going? Who do you think the labor forces are that are producing these cheap goods?
Well, let me just hold on a second. I want to put this picture up real quick. My grandpa worked on, or my great grandpa worked. A second. I don't know if I can get a picture or not. I'll put it on. I'll put it on next. My great grandpa worked at a when he was like 9 years old. He worked at a train station. I mean, he didn't do any like hard work, but he was working back in the 1910s, and he it was a different time, but he didn't kill himself. He went on to he went on to join toward the end of World War II. I might have gotten the exact date wrong when he was working, but and then he went to he went to fight in Korea after that. So
okay, but effectively, I mean, it taught him a sense of responsibility, and it sounds like the job itself made sure that they didn't put him anywhere. I mean, he didn't work somewhere where he was under a lot of stress,
pressure,
and pressure.
But
at the same time, I
be responsible slowly.
I will say that there were and it was a different time. You do have to understand different time, different culture, different context. But to a certain extent, there were jobs that utilized children, especially in the textile industry, and especially in England in the mid 19th century. I mean, little hands.
Right.
They needed little hands and little people for small crawl spaces. I get that. That I'm glad that we've evolved away from. And that is where you kind of like automation and the innovation of that. But at the same time, it was a different time, a different culture, they get different context. The fact is what is wrong with children learning a little bit of responsibility? Doesn't necessarily have to be a job.
Be 30 years old and okay, well, now I'm going to learn how to get a job, and start my life out. Now, you work
That
it
sounds like
slowly, right?
was that a rib? Was that a rib towards Gen Z?
Potentially.
Yeah, Gen Z, you're fucked.
I thought it's Gen Alpha now.
I don't know. Gen Alpha, we can probably fix them. Hopefully. Hopefully, if we can eradicate the system and let the government collapse, then we can start over. As much as I love a bargain, I'd rather pay a little more to have a quality product rather than pay less and have to replace item regularly. I agree. I do agree. So,
Or
anyways,
from polluting the atmosphere or the ocean, or destroying rainforests and polluting groundwater. My old boss, Bill Clinton, called globalization.
yeah, your
Well,
old
there's
boss,
your
Bill
problem
Clinton.
right
Were
there.
you on the flight? Did he fly with Bill Clinton to the island? Anyways,
No, he went to Vietnam with Bill Clinton. He didn't go to Lolita Island or
oh,
whatever it's called.
he did. He did the Vietnam thing, the Southeast Asian thing.
Yeah.
Weird sex tourism. Uh, before anything,
The
hold on.
exploitative conditions.
Speaking of this, this goes back to my comment and my joke about Lobby Wow. Um, Regulations are made and then deals are had, Robert, to rip those regulations into shreds. So it's government. It all rolls back to government. Anything to say, Andrew, before I hit play?
No, I was going to make a joke
Uh,
about Lobby Wow, but
Or from preventing them from
Well, make your joke.
well, I mean, I was just say you got the pink slime, you got the pneumonia. Look, the species profits. There you go. Watch
Yes.
the video; it's hilarious.
forming labor unions, or allowing employers to hire young children, or from polluting the atmosphere or the ocean, or destroying rainforests and polluting groundwater. My old boss, Bill Clinton, called globalization
the economic equivalent of a force of nature, like wind or water.
But globalization is not a force of nature. Global trade is structured by rules negotiated between nations about which assets will be protected and which will not. These rules determine who benefits and who is harmed by trade. Over recent decades, trade deals such as the North American Free Trade Act and agreements under the World Trade Organization have protected the assets of U.S. corporations, including intellectual property. For example, if another nation adopts strict environmental regulations that reduce the value of U.S. oil assets in that country, U.S. oil companies can seek compensation for their reduced profits. Trade deals have also benefited the pharmaceutical industry with extended drug patents. They benefited stock traders by ensuring they can move capital into and out of countries regardless of local banking laws. And trade deals have protected
Sounds like a dream come true.
big agriculture. Now, it's true that American consumers benefit from lower priced goods from China, Mexico, and other countries where wages are lower than in the United States. But trade deals have caused millions of Americans to lose their
I agree,
jobs.
Katie.
Between 2000 and 2017, a total of 5.5 million manufacturing jobs vanished, partly due to increasing imports, mostly from China. Global trade on its own is neither good nor bad, but the way trade is now conducted protects the wealth of those who already have it and burdens those who don't.
Andrew, any comments on
Yeah.
that one?
I was sorry, I was in the middle of posting that picture to X real quick.
Mm-hmm. No comments.
Well, like I said, I was posting that picture to X real quick. I was
Oh,
comment
well.
about it.
But the way trade is now but trade deals have
I'll play
caused
it back.
millions of Americans to lose their jobs. Between 2000 and 2017, A total of 5.5 million manufacturing jobs vanished, partly due to increasing imports, mostly from China. Global trade on its own is neither good nor bad.
It's the political implications. That's what caused those. That's blowback.
Blowback, as always. Always a
You'll
good
forgive
word.
me
But the
for,
way
for uploading a picture.
Will do.
trade is now conducted protects the wealth of those who already have it and burdens those who don't. Here's a lie you'll hear on conservative talk radio. Taxing the rich is socialism. Bunk.
I'm gonna stop you right there. Comments before he goes into this retarded myth.
I mean,
Also, if you want to, it's gaslighting. Also, if you want to comment on making fun of conservatives as well.
yeah, he's definitely a talented person. He knows the ins and outs.
I mean, he is the rich.
Yeah,
I mean, he may
he's
not
just
be a
like Bernie
billionaire.
Sanders. He's writing books, right?
Yeah,
But he's making videos.
Yeah.
He's
and making money
he's
off of
equivalent.
speed. Yeah, I don't know. This one's kind of funny. Let's play it.
Far from being a socialist country, the United States provides corporate welfare for the rich while subjecting everyone else to the harshest
Sounds like
form
a
of
government
capitalism
problem.
in the world. Most Americans who lose their jobs are not eligible for unemployment benefits. Less than 30% of working Americans have access to paid family leave. Only 36% of Americans have government-subsidized health insurance. And while people in most other countries get 3 to 5 weeks of paid vacation, Americans, on average, only get
You're advocating
11
for
days.
socialism there,
Executives
Robert.
who run their companies into
Right.
the ground are getting gold-plated exit packages, while
But
their
you know
workers
that.
get pink slips. After a security breach at Equifax that exposed the personal information of 145 million customers to hackers, Richard Smith retired with an $18 million pension. The Wells Fargo CEO, in charge of the unit that opened more than 2 million unauthorized consumer accounts, departed with a $125 million exit package. Meanwhile, thousands of big American corporations are raking in billions each year in government subsidies, bailouts, and tax loopholes, all funded on the taxpayer's dime, when their workers have to rely on programs like food stamps and Medicaid. Corporations that don't pay their workers a living wage, in effect, get fat government subsidies. This government largesse raises stock prices for the richest 1% who own half of the stock market, as well as CEOs and other top executives who are paid largely in shares of stock. The money is there. Money that could instead be used for more generous social safety nets. But we're using it to pad the pockets of the wealthy. Corporations and CEOs are job creators who need tax cuts and fat profits to generate jobs.
Would you like to comment on this before or after?
After.
All right.
Most American jobs are created by poor working and middle class people whose spending on goods and services causes businesses to create jobs. If most Americans don't have enough purchasing power, businesses won't hire. In 1914, Ford Motor Company boosted its workers' wages. Their employees could afford to buy Model T Fords, enlarging the demand for Model Ts, thus creating more jobs at Ford. The Great
That was
Crash of
without government, by the
1929
way.
ushered in the Great Depression of the 1930s because people didn't have enough money to buy the goods and services the economy could produce, which caused a vicious cycle of fewer jobs and even less money in the pockets of average people. The cycle only ended when the government stepped in through vast public spending on World War II. So when you hear that corporations need tax
Okay,
cuts
warmonger.
in order to create more jobs, or that tax increases on corporations and the wealthy are job killers, know that this is baloney.
Just so you know, everybody, World War II did not get the United States out of the Great Depression. The peacetime afterwards, when we got back home and started producing things, did.
The best way to create more jobs is to put more money into the pockets of more workers, which is why we need a higher minimum wage, an expanded earned income tax credit, and stronger unions that can bargain for higher wages. Remember, it's working people who create jobs when they have enough money in their pockets to buy. You hear this rubbish all
Comments on that?
Well, when you bring everybody on the same page, you don't have much choice in any of the consequences of, bad decisions.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you, ignoring Robert, how would you justify in raising wages?
I mean, you can't justify raising wages by force if you have another competing firm come in. Then they're gonna want your labor as long as it's local there. If they're bringing in people from the outside, then that's going to complicate it even further. So
Andrew debunking.
Yeah.
Oh, go
it's
ahead.
A subjective. It's a subjective thing. There's a million potentials. You have to address them one at a time.
Subjectivity in the objectivism of economics. Interesting take there, Andrew. So basically, you just debunked Robert in 5 seconds. I don't think we need to really continue on, but I think there's one more. I just want to let him prove he's retarded.
all the time.
He already has
Inflation
done
is
that.
caused by too much government spending, along with wage increases.
Bunk. Higher wages and government spending don't push up consumer prices.
Before we move on, does wage increases cause inflation there, Andrew?
No, it does. Applying for credit
does?
to the central bank. That's what does it.
Are you saying
Yeah.
that before we let him make a fool of himself once again, are you saying that credit expansion and increasing the money supply, circulating around a market, chasing fewer to no goods and services is what causes inflation?
Something like that.
Or,
Yeah.
or actually, I should say that is the inflation. It doesn't cause inflation.
This reminds me of a story I heard on Eric Biswell's podcast. He's talking about some wrestlers back in the WCW days, and they're saying, I made it out of this. I can't be doing this. How long is Robert Bright going to be doing this kind of thing?
Till he's dead.
How?
Oh,
I
excuse
mean,
me, unalive.
Is this uninstalled? I mean, is there really a point to be doing this when he's clearly embarrassing himself? I mean, I don't get it.
Well, let's see. How old is Robert
Rick
Reich?
Steiner, that's who it was.
Was it Rick Steiner?
Yeah,
Robert is 78 years old. So around Donald Trump's age. There you go. He'll probably be doing this for the rest of his life, because why not?
I mean,
In many cases, mega corporations raise prices to increase their profits. They can do this because they face such little competition. Worried about sky-high airfares and lousy
Again,
service?
Sounds like a
That's
government
largely
issue.
because airlines have merged from 12 carriers in
Oh, actually, we discussed this with the Jimmy Carter episode this past week. Jimmy Carter actually allowed for the competition of the airline, and that's why you saw a robust expansion of of different companies start up, and he's about to show it. But there's like 4 or 5 large companies now. Um, I wonder why.
1980 to only 4 today.
Oh, 4.
Concerned about drug prices? Between 1995 and 2015, 60 leading pharmaceutical companies merged to only 10. Upset about food costs? 4 large companies now control 85% of beef processing, 70% of the pork market, and
Oh,
54%
that's
of
kind of
poultry.
scary.
Worried about grocery prices? Just 3 giants, Albertsons, Kroger, and Walmart, control 70% of the grocery sales in 167 cities. Monopolies can raise prices and keep them high because there's not enough competition to charge lower prices and grab their consumers away. Right now, responsibility for fighting inflation lies with the
Andrew, would you like to debunk him
Well,
on
I
why
just
there's
want
not
to.
enough competition?
Well, let me step in real quick. Kroger's is they have such an influence, but they're also union. That's why it's so much more expensive than going to Walmart. Walmart's
Yes,
non-union, but they rely on cheap Chinese products, and
that's true
I mean
too.
even though they're more quote unquote in the perspective of the free market, they're big Democrat donors anyways. So I mean, it's there you
Democrats,
go,
Republicans.
appealing to power, appealing to power. It's always appealing to power. There's no free market because it's only appealing to power. Trusted
Yeah.
actors.
Well, and then on top of that, there's a reason why they can control pricing. It's not just a union with Kroger, but all of them, Walmart included. Um, a lot of it you have to coincide with the large subsidy-driven programs, EBT, SNAP. These companies actually lose money if they were to accept SNAP. So there's a large driven supply of subsidy going into these companies from the government, federal through the state governments and into your local governments. Pour that money into your local Walmart, Kroger, etc. Albertsons, which is actually Kroger now, if the merger went through, and it and then the subsidy is used to offset all of the individual subsidy of EBT and SNAP, so they
And
can
they can
control
write
the fix.
if
No,
somebody
go ahead.
steals from them. If somebody steals from them, they can write off the loss on their taxes.
Boom, and that's where you get your tax break for these large trusts. So
This is not investment advice.
Federal
We're not
Reserve.
advising to get a tax refund by taking from the grocery store. By the way,
sure it is. Always figure out ways to adversely possess your taxes.
which raises interest rates to slow the economy when prices rise. But this causes more unemployment, keeps wages low, and harms many working people. An important way to avoid inflation would be to fight it at the source.
you mean break up the government?
Actually, yeah, but if all the companies merged, they'd be able to pay fairer wages and charge less for their products because they'd have nobody to compete with.
Eh,
Comment on this, Andrew.
Well, if you do something like that, then there's nowhere to go, and when shit hits the fan, you're you don't have any. You're going to be starving. I mean, look what happens with the USSR. They put everybody behind the central bank in the USSR in order to
Mhm.
you know maintain their control because those people had nowhere to go, and every time that there was
Yeah.
an issue, they would bring somebody in from a different part of the USSR to drown out the dissenting voice, and that's why it took such a long time for them to finally admit, okay, we screwed up, get off our backs, and
Mhm.
they let the wall fall.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it also comes down to as far as like our country is concerned. Again, I can only talk about the United States. I'm an American. Um, it has a lot to do with once again the subsidy. So they can control the price fluctuation as best as they can. Certainly, if companies merge, you could see a fairer wage gap, and you could see cheaper products. but at the same time, you're going to see a lot less positive products, I guess you could say. So you don't know exactly where the food source is and what they're doing to it. So just because it's cheap, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good
That's a
and
trade-off.
healthy. It's just a trade-off, just like any market. And just because the wages are fair, well, what do you think the subsidy as well as the inflation is doing to those wages? It's devaluing the currency. So it really wouldn't be a good thing in the long run. So if you had companies merge, I would suggest competing and becoming self-sustainable on a local level and building relationships with people that are raising their own livestock and growing their own crops, or learn to do it on your own if you can. If you can. So
Break up monopolies using antitrust laws so that a handful of private companies can't artificially raise prices. Many people fall for this lie. Unconstrained economic growth is always good. That's bunk. Unconstrained economic growth is causing such grave harm to the climate that its costs are likely to be greater than the gains. Mainstream economists don't measure the costs of growth. They talk about climate change as a so-called externality, as if it were just incidental to growth. Wrong. If you consider the deaths and injuries caused by chemical pollution, wildfires, more intense hurricanes and storms, the costs of growth are huge. It's possible to shift
of
from an
course.
economy organized around growth to one organized around sustainability. How? Dramatically reduce the use of fossil fuels, limit what can be.
Anything to add there, sir?
It reminds me of a video I saw by David Friedman, who was saying situations like this are actually a feature, and you should be happy that something like this happens because it motivates people to do better.
So so when you restrain it, when you restrain growth, then as Robert wants to do, what does that do then? You're not exactly allowing people to strive to do better. You're forcing them. So
You,
what would that do?
you're forcing them to suffer for your political gain.
So you're forcing people to pay a tax for carbon
You're
emissions.
literally forcing people to die earlier because it's more convenient for you in a political sense than anything else.
They're killing all the cows, man, because of the farts in Europe. What the
I don't
fuck is
think
going on?
I don't think parts of the world are too terribly concerned about farts in Europe.
I don't think so either. I think most people are more concerned with, World War III. There are better options than fossil fuels. Certainly are. There can be other options. There are your fossil fuels. Is that sustainable? For right now, that is what we have. But you have to learn, you have to scope, and you have to innovate. So, what are other alternative energies then that we could potentially attach ourselves to, Andrew?
Well, it just depends on what you can afford. To It's called the Kuznets curve. And wealthy, I'm going to borrow this line for the rap battle, but only wealthy societies can afford to go green and to pay the high cost of adopting those practices before anybody else.
Yeah. So, adoption, adaptation, and innovation. So
Yeah.
you have to use what you're using now, but in the meantime, figure out what is more sustainable in the future. We all know that we can't just attach ourselves to oil or coal or natural gas forever. That's inevitable. But we can figure out means, if there are any means, to achieve some sort of sustainable energy. One such could be nuclear. I know, dirty word. That is one alternative. To go green in the effect of what government is trying to force through subsidy and tax break and over regulation, that ends up getting broken anyways, such as solar and wind. There are pros to how clean the energy can be, but there are cons to how devastating it can be to the environment and to the human element of the environment as well, with the waste. Like, yes, a lithium battery can last for 50 years, but what happens and where does that lithium battery go, after it's done? Like, what do you do with it? It just winds up in the waste dump. Wind can be it can be one alternative that can certainly help propel for some sustainable energy. But what does it do on the environment now, specifically with the migration of birds, and what does it do to the environment post because of the resources being utilized? Solar panels, same thing. Um, and on top of that, the resources and the energy that goes into creating, producing, and maintaining all of these scenarios, all of these gadgets, it's kind of a waste as well. It's not really as sustainable, and you're still utilizing fossil fuel.
Let
So
me let me
yeah.
draw an illustration here. Remember Elon Musk is talking about how he had to do all these research studies for California in order to do his business, and now how they were worried about the long term effects of whatever it was going to have on the whales or the dolphins or whatever. This is
Mhm.
a strategy by Enneagram Fix 6. They wear people down in order to get them on their level because they're concerned about having other people influencing their behavior. So if they can wear the people down, then they figure the people will give up and they'll have power over them.
This comes from Texas Spy Historian, actually over on Rumble. Thank you, sir. Yes, it's like minimalism. Most of those influencers have the funds to buy whatever they need whenever they need. What do you think about this comment?
I mean, if you can afford to work year over year and maintain a majority of your money withheld, you have a better chance at minimalism than anything else. So I
Mm.
can see how that would work.
So they preen about how they are minimalist, Spartan even. So and then get politicians to run on treadmills to generate energy. Maybe.
I
I'm
could
I'm fine
benefit
with
from
that.
that.
I can just get behind that just
I
for
start with
even if it doesn't.
I start with Nancy Pelosi and her insider trading. Gotta work off that those benefits.
And then while
Or
we're
that
at it,
outcome.
we'll yeah. Yeah, while we're at it, we'll move on to Kyer Stormer. Think I said his name right. I don't really care. He's a piece of shit. That's the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Yeah, we'll move on to him, and we'll just get everybody one by one. I just want to do it just to do it, honestly. So with that, should we continue on with retard? Finish it. There's not a whole lot else to left
I
to.
think we've
Think we've
basically touched everything. Just like
we've
we touched the
exhausted it.
thermostat.
So
We touched thermostat.com. We touched it.
Yeah, so who touched it.com. So yeah, get your political apparel, get your everything apparel, start a conversation. Just like this one. So I think we touched up what one last thing before we close out, because I think we've exhausted everybody, and I think we've definitely exhausted ourselves with Robert Reich. Um, what are your thoughts on Robert, and what do you think of Robert? Because I know that you don't necessarily know who you really haven't experienced Robert until recently.
I mean, he's just a grifter like anybody else. He's in politics. He's obviously looking to maintain some kind of position for future potential. So,
So, and I love how he calls his little segment spiel inequality media. Um, Thoughts on that?
well, he reminds me of I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Michael Mouse was trolling him a couple months, or probably about a half a year ago.
Michael Malice was trolling him.
Yeah, he was telling him he had AIDS. He was talking about those old breath mint things or whatever. Bill Mitchell. Mitchell. He reminds me of Bill Mitchell.
Yeah. I don't think I know should I know who Bill Mitchell is?
Not really, but he was
Is
he was a grifter for the Trump campaign back in 2016, and he's just been trying to continuously grift ever since. So
they're all grifters. Let's just get that through all of our thick skulls. Politics creates grifters. And this goes back to the ancient Athenians. I mean, the demagogues in direct democracy that achieved power were grifters. The Roman Senate were grifters in the Republic. The United States of America were founded on grifters and Masons. If you want to go really, really secretive and dystopian. Not a good thing that we were founded by Masons.
you need a foundational myth to maintain a society, right?
Well, the Masons are evil and satanic. So there you go. Which I it's hard for me to say that because I have family that were Masons. They were low level. They weren't like 30 to. They weren't on the high level. Once you get higher, you start seeing the evils, the shadow realm of those who actually govern through this secret wave that, for some reason, we're enamored to.
I don't know. I've never been involved with it, but I'll take your word for it.
So, thank you, Katie. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. This has been another edition of the Legacy Right. All we say here is like, subscribe, follow us, YouTube, Rumble, share this content, and share Buds and Reality stuff too. So and anybody and everybody in this field trying to get a message across. So with that, I'd like to promote. Where the fuck is it? I lost it. Uh-oh. Oh.
Hijacking Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out. It's a good book.
We need to get back to a common sense manner in life. So this is reasonably cheap, only about 70 or so pages. Check this out, read it. You can probably get it done in a day, and let's bring back some common sense in here. So, and follow at Town Liberation and to Free Mike over on X, and send him a DM and tell him what your experience is on the local level and what you're trying to do to liberate yourself and your township on your local community, using a little bit of that agorism, but in a political sector. I know we're anti-political, but you can use agorism to a certain extent in political sphere to try to divorce yourself from the tyranny and the centralization of what hellhole we live in. Do you want to be a third world like the federal government has created through their imperialism, or do you want to prosper on your local and individual side?
It's entirely up to you.
Entirely up to you. So with that, Andrew, you have anything else to say and comment, leave?
I left a picture comment on X of my grandpa, like I was talking about earlier, if anybody wants to check it out. So
fantastic. I will repost that to everybody as well. So check that out. AI Conan 90 if you want to follow Andrew. So until next time, we will be back Monday at 5 p.m. for another edition of Legacy News. Peace.
Thanks for watching.
Live long and prosper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gene Okerlund, and I'd like to welcome you to WCW Nitro.
You know, brother, you think you got what it takes to beat Hollywood Hogan once you climb in the ring and try out the largest arms in the world. Holy snap.
You want to wrestle an inch more Ric Flair, you gotta be able to walk that out and style and profile. Woo!
You really think you're ready for the
You really think you're ready for the Scorpion Deathlock? You think you're ready for a fatal encounter?
This is why they call me the total package. Do you have a pain threshold to withstand the butcher rack? Let's find out.
Hallo, hier ist Alex Wright. Wenn ihr High-Flying Wrestling Action wollt, Spinning Sidekick, Top Turnbuckle Dropkick, dann nehmt mich. Der Sieg ist euch sicher. Versprecht euch.
Oh yeah! Watch the flying elbow drop off the top rope. Not only beat people 1, 2, 3, but I hurt him real bad.
It only takes one of 1,000 holds. I think you're man enough for the challenge.
You better be ready to wrestle, because you know, when you're getting in the ring with Eddie Guerrero, it's going to be high-flying and exciting.
Hey, anytime you feel foggy, man, I'll slap on the buzz killer and rip your shoulder right out of socket. Wolfpack style! Hey, funky boy. Like there's a choice here? Good God! Pick the man with the plan. Pick deep. Hey, all you suckers out there, you wanna play the game? You wanna play with the big boy? Put your feet on the button, cause when you go down 110th Street, it's gonna be on like neck bone, sucker.
This is Booker T from Harlem Heat, hardcore OG brother from 110th Street. If any of you punks got the guts to step up to the plate, push the button.
Yo, Chico, you selected Scott Hall? Get ready for a wild ride on the outside.
Hey there! How'd you like to get power pop? Come on, take me. I'm begging you, take me.
You think you got the courage to step in the ring? I think you're gonna wind up in a snap neck with a choke slam.
Technical wrestler, high flyer, brawler. Don't matter what you consider yourself to be. When you're in the ring with the crippler, you're a loser.